Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ryan Pyle podcast. I am your host, Ryan Pyle, and I am coming to you from Dubai. That's right. Somehow, some way, I've made it back to my office here in Dubai. Yeah, it's been 8 months. 8 months. It's 7 a.m, and I'm sitting in my office in Dubai for the first time since March 12th. And that is not by my own liking. What can I say? It's a bit emotional, to be honest. Much more emotional than I could have ever thought. What did I feel like when I left this office? I don't know. I guess there was some concern when I left on March the 12th to go to Ethiopia. A lot of uncertainty in the world, but never did I think that the world would close in March and that I would get stuck in Istanbul for 4 months and then go off on a little adventure, which is what I'll talk about today in my podcast. So today's topic in my podcast is what I have been up to since I left Istanbul. So for those of you who are just catching up, obviously March the 13th, I flew to Ethiopia from Dubai to work on an Extreme Treks episode. And why did I do that? At the time in early March, there was talk of a virus and Italy was suffering and China was suffering. So I thought the best thing for me to do would be to go out into the mountains of northern Ethiopia on the border with South Sudan and disappear for a couple weeks and do some trekking and climbing. And it was beautiful for a while. And anyways, I got stuck out there in Ethiopia, and then the United Arab Emirates closed, as well as Europe and pretty much all of North America. So I got stuck in Ethiopia, and then I eventually made it over to Istanbul, which is where I spent 4 months, which is where I started doing these podcasts. And anyways, eventually I made it out of Istanbul. And I spent 4 months filming, which is what I'm going to talk about today. But yeah, how does it feel to be back in Dubai? Wow. So Dubai at the moment is a pretty open place. It doesn't seem to be going through any lockdowns. And you have to wear a mask in the street. You have to wear a mask indoors. The only place you don't have to wear a mask, I guess, is when you're sitting and eating in a restaurant. But other than that, it's a pretty mask-heavy part of the world. But it is open. Things are open. The city is open. Everything is working, which I'm guessing is better than most of the places in the world at the moment. So if you are in one of those places in the world that is on heavy lockdown yet again, please, just take care and follow public health and your public health officials, and hopefully, I don't know. I mean, we'll all be done this at some stage soon, I suppose. It's terrifying. Yeah, it is absolutely terrifying. It's funny, every time I put on the mics and I put the headphones on, it feels like I'm going into a confessional booth. I don't know if any of you have grown up religious, but in the Christian or the Catholic church, there was always a booth in the back where you could sit down and anonymously, of course, the priest always knew who you were, but you could anonymously or, confess your sins. And I feel like every time I sit in front of this microphone, I'm going back into some kind of confessional booth. Like it's just me and you. And who are you? The nameless many who follow along. And I'm very appreciative that everyone follows along, and I'm very appreciative to have this opportunity to talk, even though it's at 7 a.m. in my office in Dubai. At least I'm back. And yeah, I wanted the first thing that I did when I came back to my office in Dubai was to do a podcast, because it's pretty crazy out there, man. And I've been through I've had a unique, story arc, I guess, if you wanted to make it into a television show or a film. I've had a unique character arc over the last few months where I've been stuck abroad, trapped, and then somehow filming through all of this, which is what I will talk about in just a few minutes when we get this podcast started in earnest. So look, I am in Dubai. Everything seems to be okay. I am healthy. I was tested negative before I could come back into Dubai, which is part of the rules here. And everything on my end is okay. And it's surreal to be back. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about it yet, but I will hopefully do more podcasts and hopefully use this as a platform to just keep communicating with everyone about how I'm doing mentally, emotionally, and of course, physically. But so far, so good. Okay, let's take a moment, take a breather, and I will get into what I've been up to for the last 4 months and why I haven't been able to podcast as much as I previously thought. So I'll be back in a second and we'll get into it. Hey everyone, as promised, I'm going to tell you what I've been doing for the last 4 months. So, the last time I came to you, I was sitting in an apartment in Istanbul. Yeah, we all remember that, right? I was traveling through Ethiopia, filming. The world closed, and I ended up in Istanbul for 4 months, and I have a cat. Yes. And Whiskey, my cat, is with me here in Dubai. So that's all good. So, it's been 4 months since my last podcast, 4 months since my last confession to you all. And it's a little terrifying to be back on the mics. But at the end of the day, this is what I do. So it's time to get on with it. What have I been up to? So I was sitting in Istanbul. And the whole time I was planning this like grand European adventure without much certainty. So I had this idea that Europe would open up. This was in like May, maybe April, May. I had this idea like Europe was going to reopen and then I'd be able to go to Europe and get some filming done. And this sounds crazy now because we're in like November. But in like May, June, like I was certain Europe was going to reopen and the summer was going to be great and everything was going to be fun and I'd be back filming. And so that was that. So I had repositioned everything in my world to be ready to film in Europe. And all I was waiting for, literally, all I was waiting for was for one country in the European Union to open their borders to Turkey. Because I was in Istanbul and I couldn't fly to like France or Germany or any of these countries because I didn't have a EU-based passport and I didn't have a residence permit and I didn't own property. So I had no real reason to go. And that's what the border police, are asking people. Like, why are you coming to our country? And you have to prove why you're coming. And that has never been an issue before. And now it is. And it's terrifying that you have to like now prove why you're going anywhere. But that was it. So I didn't have any of those documents to show border people at the borders and stuff like that. So I just sat in Istanbul and I waited for one country in the EU to open up to Turkey. And it ended up being Slovenia. So on July 1st, the European Union, they did this big reopening, like, hey, we're reopening our borders and everything like that. And now in November, they're closing again. But, they were reopening their borders. Everything was, seeming to be more positive. And yeah, I mean, it was terrifying in some ways, just what was going on. And the fact that somehow these borders could just reopen after being closed just didn't seem right. to me. But Slovenia, which is actually a country in the European Union, for those of you who might not know, Slovenia, and it's just northeast of Italy, and south of Austria. So I waited, and the first country that opened up, I booked a ticket for. So, and this all happened very, very quickly. And I just have to thank my landlord in Istanbul, Engin. Engin is a beautiful human being, and he was very helpful and very understanding of my situation. And he let me leave early and get out of my lease early and everything like that, because I was renting an apartment from him. And yeah, I mean, things were crazy, right? And that's just where we were at the moment. But so I booked a ticket to Slovenia on the 14th of July. And then I left on the 15th of July with my cat. And that was it. That was how I got out of Istanbul. So the crazy thing is, though, is I got to the airport, and of course there's all these like new social distancing measures and everything like that. But this was July. I mean, this was like early, right? For people to start traveling again. So I got to the airport and I was like, okay, I'm going to get a COVID test. And, you know, on the news and things like that, they were saying like you could go to the Istanbul airport and you could get a COVID test and get the results in 1 hour. And this was July. So I went and I paid for a COVID test, and I went down to the people and I was like, okay, so I can get the results in 1 hour, right? And they're like, no, 8 hours. And I'm like, 8 hours? I'm like, I'm flying in like 3 hours. I came to the airport 4 hours before I was supposed to fly so I could get a COVID test and then fly to Slovenia. So that was a money grab and a complete waste of time. I mean, why would you have a COVID test center at the airport and ask people to test before they fly if the results are coming out 8 hours later? So that was a waste of time. So I didn't have a COVID negative test when I flew to Slovenia. Anyways, and then the guy at the counter, when I checked in for my flight, it was no problem. So they're like, okay, you're going to Slovenia. Okay, great. And you've got a cat. Okay, great. And you've got some bags. Okay, great. And I checked everything in. I got my pass. And then I went to the gate, and the guy who checks your ticket was like, why are you going to Slovenia? And I'm like, fuck, like, you have to just tell people now why you're going anywhere. And this is crazy for me, because I spent like 10 years just going wherever I wanted all the time without having to explain to anyone what I was doing, where I was going, or why. And now I've been stuck in Istanbul for 4 months. And this guy who collects tickets at the gate so I can get on an airplane is like the gatekeeper to my escape from Istanbul after 4 months. And I'm not saying he was a bad human being. I'm not saying he was evil or out to get me. He's just doing his job. But I was like, oh, I'm going for work. And there's like, you can't be a tourist. And I'm like, no, like I make TV shows. Like I'm going to work in Slovenia. And he goes, well, you got to show me something. So I showed him some stuff from the BBC, and I showed him some stuff on Amazon Prime. And I'm like, I'm going to film. And he's like, what about the cat? And I was like, the cat always comes with me, man. Come on, know your shit. And he's like, oh, fine. He just like got tired of me and sent me through. So the only reason I got out of Istanbul, the only reason I managed to film for 4 months through Europe, is because some person, some guy, some airport official just got tired of me and passed me through and let me get on the airplane from Istanbul to Slovenia. So the flight from Istanbul to Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia, is about 2.5 hours. And of course, you're just sitting there in your mask. And I was keeping my cat nice and calm and relaxed, and everything was fine. And I had a little bit of food, and you take off your mask. For those of you who haven't flown in the last few months, it's kind of ridiculous. You put on your mask, you keep it on all through the airport, you wear it for the entire flight, but then when you eat, you can take off your mask. So, you take off your mask, you put it on the side or on the seat next to you if it's empty, and then you eat. And then when you're done eating, you put on your mask. And it's just like, well, am I at risk if I'm eating? Am I at risk of, infecting someone else if I'm eating? Am I at a higher risk of catching something if I'm eating without my mask? And why are they letting us take off our masks to eat? And we have to wear our masks all the time. And it was kind of confusing. So anyways, I took off my mask like everyone else and I ate. And then when I was done eating, I put my mask back on. And then I landed in Slovenia. And when I landed in Slovenia, I didn't have an EU passport. And I didn't have residency in the EU or any kind of residence visa or any real reason to be there. So the immigration people got very upset, and there was a lot of humming and hawing, and they let everyone through ahead of me. And they made me wait until the end. And then they said, okay, and this was July 15th, the exact date, July 15th. And then they said, well, you need to do a mandatory 14-day quarantine, or you need to get, tested negative like right away. And I was like, okay. So they threw a whole bunch of these documents in my face, which told me that I promised to quarantine until I could get a test. And then I would quarantine after I would get a test. And then I would quarantine also if the test was positive. So this was like, anyways, they put all these papers in front of me, and it was all not in English. There was nothing in English. And they're like, sign here, sign here, sign here. And I just fucking signed them. Like, I was just like, get me out of this airport. Get me into Slovenia. Like, I have been in an apartment in Istanbul for 4 months. Man, just let me out. Let me out into the world again. And so I signed all these papers. I didn't have any idea what they said. I probably broke the law multiple times in Slovenia, just not knowing what was going on. And for the people of Slovenia, I apologize profusely. I hope I can go back there. Ljubljana is beautiful. The whole country is really beautiful, actually. I've got a lot of ideas. But the point is, the people at the airport were quite rough with me. And so I got back to... I got to the airport, I signed all these papers, and then they let me go. And then, and then I got a taxi and I went to the Intercontinental Hotel in Ljubljana, not an advertisement. And I was supposed to stay there for 14 days. And when I got to the hotel, my taxi driver wasn't wearing a mask. The people at the hotel were wearing masks though. And then I sat there for like a day or two. And then I went and I found a hospital nearby with a COVID testing center. And I got the nose swab test, the PCR test, I believe it is. And I went to the hospital and I was wearing my mask. And I went into some little room and some guy came in like, in a full hazmat suit and tested me. And he stuck the swab up my nose and tickled my brain. For those of you who have not had the PCR swab test, it is terrifying. It is evasive. It feels awful. And it hurts a little bit, but you can still feel the intrusion in your nose days later, I guess. Maybe perhaps it's not being done right. I think there's a variety of ways that these tests are being administered, and a variety of ways these tests are being performed, and the variety of them all means that maybe we're not necessarily getting the results that we all deserve, because it's terrifying. I watch some of these people do PCR tests on television, and they just scrape the inside of your nose or something like that, whereas this man, who was my nurse, who he was a doctor or nurse, he stuck this piece of plastic with a cotton swab on it, like right up my nose till it hit my brain. I mean, whatever he put in my nose was up there, like a couple inches. And it hurt, and that was that. So he jabbed me in the nose, and then I paid €85 for that test in July. And then I went back to my hotel, and the next morning, 9 a.m., they emailed me with the results and said they were negative, which was great. That was a relief, actually, because that was the first time I had been tested for COVID-19. Since being stuck in Istanbul. The whole time I was in Istanbul, I never got tested. I just stayed in my apartment and put on my mask and went to the grocery store. it was, it was pretty simple. I didn't really have any contact with anyone else, and I didn't have any friends or family in Istanbul. So there was no like going out and getting together with family and birthdays or funerals or weddings or any of the other things that people are dealing with at the moment. And I was just sitting there, man. And sitting in Ljubljana. And so when I got the negative test, I felt like, okay, now it's okay to move again. And the whole time this was playing out, I was working. Like I was actively putting together, content proposals for partners and broadcasters and corporate partners that we do our filming with. So, and I was doing my COVID calls. For those of you who remember, I was doing my COVID calls, quite often, and I was really enjoying those. And I did one from Ljubljana, actually. I don't know if you guys remember. It was like number 99 of my COVID calls. It was one of my last. I did 100 of them, 100 like 1 hour interviews. But I did number 99 from the Intercontinental in Ljubljana. So I tested negative, and then I was like, okay, I guess I have access to the rest of Europe now, because I've tested negative. I'm not a threat to anyone else. And if I wear a mask, I guess, I'm okay. And I rented a car and I drove through Italy into Switzerland. And I went to Verbier, which is a beautiful ski resort, mountain resort in southern Switzerland, in the Alps. And I rented an apartment there for 2 weeks. And it was very reasonably priced because everything was empty there. Like the Swiss were still traveling, but there were no international tourists or anything like that. And I spent 2 weeks hiking in the mountains and just getting my fitness back and getting my energy back and getting my life back in some ways. For those of you who might not know, I make television shows all about trekking and hiking around the world. And that's a huge part of my life, and a huge part of my mental health is being outside and being able to trek and hike and climb and being in the mountains and all this. And being stuck in Istanbul for 4 months was really, really hard. And yeah, it was tough anyways. And to be back out in the mountains was beautiful. So it was cathartic. It was my therapy in many ways. But why did I go to Switzerland? Yeah. I had signed a deal with the Swiss Tourism Bureau to walk across Switzerland, and this was going to be one of my Extreme Treks episodes. So I was supposed to start walking across Switzerland in August 1st. I was supposed to start this journey of my walk across Switzerland, and they were really concerned that I wasn't going to get to Switzerland because we're having these calls, like these like Zoom calls now. And it's funny, I just got back to my office in Dubai and Zoom is not installed on my desktop. And I was like, wow, it's been a while, man. Like 8 months now, like Zoom is practically a verb. Like, hey, I'll Zoom you, or like, let's do a Zoom meeting and all these things. And that also is not an advertisement. That's just the sad truth of where we are at the moment. But yeah, Zoom is not on my desktop. So that is how long it's been since I have been here, because Zoom now dominates our world. Yeah, so I was having these, conference calls while I was stuck in Istanbul, and they're like, well, are we going to be able to do this show where you walk across Switzerland, along the Via Alpina, 390 kilometers, 20 stages, 20 days? And I was like, well, I would love to, and I want to, but I don't know how to get out of Istanbul. So there were many days of like me not knowing if I was ever going to work again in Istanbul. But then I got out into Slovenia, and like people weren't wearing masks, and it was Europe, and it was summer, and I don't know, everything just felt like it might be okay somehow. Anyways, I got to Verbier into Switzerland, and that meant that all of a sudden now my Switzerland trip was a go. Rightly or wrongly, we decided to film in Switzerland. And in August in Switzerland, no one was wearing masks. There was no mask mandate for anyone. And you have to understand where Switzerland was at the moment. I mean, this was July. I mean, in August, like no one was wearing masks in Switzerland. It was summer in Europe. Everyone was outside. The weather was perfect. It was a totally, beautiful place to be in. And I was going to be walking across Switzerland along this Via Alpina trail, which is about 390 kilometers, takes 20 days. And this was going to be one of my extreme treks adventures. And, it's good social distancing. It was outside all the time, no public transportation, no big hotels. It was all like, bed and breakfasts and all that. And I felt like it was not that risky, and now that's something we have to think about. Like, is this production risky, or is it, worth getting back to work, or should we all just stay indoors? And these are things I have to think about like all the time now, and never had to think about them before. But, yeah, it's terrifying. It is truly, truly terrifying. So I managed to get back to work. Yeah, and I walked across Switzerland all of August. And for those of you who don't follow me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram, and you can see that whole journey. I was with my good friend Ursula, who was my guide, and she was amazing. And yeah, we had a pretty epic adventure. And Whiskey was with me the whole time. For those of you who keep asking about my cat, he's been with me the whole time, and he's lovely. So Whiskey was with me there in Switzerland as well. And then after Switzerland, I went to Poland, and I filmed in Poland, in the Tatra Mountains. Again, you can follow that on Instagram. And then after that, I filmed in Heidelberg. And after that, I filmed in Malta. Yeah, I mean, I was doing extreme treks in Switzerland. And that was a 390 kilometer Via Alpina. That was a double episode. Then we went over to Poland. And again, in Poland, like, no one was wearing masks really, except on the gondolas. And yeah, we filmed an episode of extreme treks in the Tatra Mountains in Poland. And like, these were parts of the world that are open, and they were open. I mean, now I think they're locking down and having problems just because it's winter. But in the summer, like, everyone was outside and no one was wearing masks, and it felt like things were normal, and it was nice to be in that environment. And it's nice to be outside, and we were hiking and climbing, and it was just kind of lovely. And I was just trying to use up as much of the summer as I could to film as much as I could, because I had a feeling deep down in July, August, and September, which is now, in November, we've confirmed it. Like, I had a feeling that this kind of openness of Europe, and this kind of open feeling in Europe, was seasonal. And that when winter came, winter is coming. When winter eventually arrived, things would lock back down again, because, for those of us that know anything, I suppose, there is a flu season. And when summer turns to winter, people get sick, and this is common. This was, happens well before anyone ever talked about COVID-19. This is kind of common. So I always had this kind of assumption that Europe would start to close again in the winter or in the fall, and that's kind of what we've seen over the last few weeks. But I was kind of pretty determined to finish my work. So I filmed an episode of Extreme Treks in the Tatra Mountains, and then I started a whole new series called The Nomad. And for those of you who might not know, I have an office here in Dubai, but I am essentially homeless. I do not have a home of my own, and I stay in a apartment hotel when I'm here in Dubai, because I'm never here that often. And so I started this new series called The Nomad, which is, all these cool things that I do when I'm not climbing or trekking across deserts. And it's basically just hanging out with nice people and having great food and meeting artists and stuff like that. So I filmed an episode of that in Heidelberg, Germany, which was great. I filmed an episode of that in Valletta in Malta. I've never been to Malta before. And that was another flight, actually. So in Switzerland, we drove, and then we drove to Poland, and then we drove back to Germany, and I did an episode in Heidelberg, Germany, which is a beautiful little town. And then from Germany, we actually flew to Malta. And that was actually fine. Like, we had to wear the mask on the plane. But when we were in Malta, it was pretty free and clear. It was pretty warm out. It was summer. October in Malta is still summer, and it was pretty beautiful. And that was a really nice filming experience again. And this is October. Like, if you were in the United States in October or November, obviously with the election and stuff like that, like wearing a mask is a hugely political issue, and COVID-19 is still ravaging huge parts of the world. But I've somehow managed to like be in these little bubbles and do filming where COVID wasn't really an issue. And that sounds crazy, I know, because COVID's such a global issue and countries are being so, nervous about how they're dealing with everything. But actually, it wasn't such a huge deal in all the countries we were dealing with or working in. But yeah, so we filmed an episode in Valletta, Malta, and then we went to Dubrovnik in Croatia. And the reason why we went to Croatia, two reasons. I mean, Croatia's beautiful, but I had to get out of the EU. So for those of us that are not EU passport holders, for those of us who are North American passport holders, Canadians and Americans, we can only stay in the European Union for 90 days. So at the end of Malta, this was like October 15th. I was like, wow, I arrived in Slovenia on July 15th. So I just spent 90 days in Europe, and I had to get out. So from Malta, I went to Dubrovnik, Croatia, and Croatia is part of the European Union, but they're not part of the Schengen visa zone. And the Schengen visa zone is the thing that I had to get out of. So I had to get out of the Schengen visa zone, and I did, which was no problem. And I was in Dubrovnik, Croatia, and I filmed an episode of The Nomad in Dubrovnik, Croatia, and it was amazing. And then from Dubrovnik, Croatia, I went down to Kotar, the Kotar Bay in Montenegro, which is just south of Dubrovnik. So, in the middle of a global pandemic, we managed to film in Switzerland, Poland, Germany, Malta, Croatia, and Montenegro. And, some people on social media questioned my judgment. Some people said, oh, you shouldn't be filming during these times and all that kind of stuff. And you shouldn't be posting pictures of yourself happy, drinking wine with people and meeting chefs and artists and things like that. And everyone has their own opinion, and that's fine. And I can respect that. But at the same time, it's like, you follow the protocols that the government sets. So in all the countries I was filming in, you didn't have to wear a mask when you were walking down the street. In every country I filmed in, you had to wear a mask indoors unless you were seated at a table, drinking or eating or consuming food. And then also too, if you were in a public restaurant or in a public space, you had to wear a mask. And a lot of the places we filmed, we actually filmed off hours. They weren't open to the public. It was a private opening and no one else was kind of around. So we were in a private setting, and in those cases, you don't have to wear a mask in a lot of those cases. So, and in all these episodes that we filmed, we were also working with like the government, like we were working with tourism bureaus, or the government had invited us to film, and they updated us of the public health situation all the time. And yeah, we just kept working. And of course, if you were in the United States or if you were in some country in Asia that was heavily locked down and you're looking at me drinking wine in Dubrovnik and with no mask, you might, get upset. And I can understand that. And, I was trying to be conscientious of that. Conscientious? I was trying to be aware of that as well. But, at the same time, we needed to work. I'm not just a television host. I have a company. My company is a production company. I work with some amazing people. I pay them. In order to pay them, I have to work. And, when I was stuck in Istanbul, we were all unemployed, not making any money. And I know it's now November and a lot of people are still unemployed and a lot of people still haven't worked. And I feel very fortunate that I got to work at least, in August, September, October, and November before things kind of closed down again. And yeah, I just don't know how to really explain or justify that. But at the same time, like, I'm still in touch with every single person we filmed with in Switzerland and in Poland and in Malta and Dubrovnik and Montenegro, and everyone's still healthy. Everyone's still fine. My crew and I, we were all healthy and we were all fine. None of us, got ill. We were tested, a few times along the way, always negative. And yeah, we managed to kind of get it all done somehow. I don't know. It's fucking crazy, Sorry if I'm swearing too much. It's just how I feel at the moment, It's just hard to process all of this chaos. And then here we go. So I'm filming in Montenegro. This is November. This is just a few days ago. I was filming in Montenegro. And it's getting deep into winter. And as we got deeper into winter, every country we visited started slowly locking up again. Curfews, wearing masks in the street. And once the masks in the street and the curfews came in, we knew that it probably wasn't safe to film anymore. So, but this was happening after we left countries. So in Malta, we left and then they started implementing a curfew and making people wear masks on the street. And then we were filming in Dubrovnik, and then when we left, they introduced a curfew and started wearing masks on the street. And then in Montenegro as well. And the writing was on the wall in many ways that it was time to go. And the question was really just go where? So as we were finishing our filming in Montenegro, I've got a crew with me as well. I have to think of their safety and everything. And so we're sitting in Montenegro and we're like, okay, I think the best place to go is back to Dubai, because Dubai seems to have this system in place where they're testing people on arrival and you got to get tested before you come, and they're open, but you have to wear masks everywhere. And it seemed like they had something figured out. I don't know. Plus it's my home. Plus I have an office here, so it just made sense to come back to Dubai. So I was sitting in Montenegro and I was like, how do I get back to Dubai? As Europe was closing down again, and this is just a week ago, there's no commercial flights. There were no, Lufthansa just canceled. I'm just picking on Lufthansa because we were trying to fly Lufthansa at one stage. We were also trying to fly Turkish Airlines. We also looked at Air France, KLM, British Airways. This is not no hit against Lufthansa, but they just canceled flights to Croatia and Montenegro. I was kind of stuck in Montenegro, and I didn't know how to get from Montenegro to Dubai. So when we finished our filming in Montenegro and everything went really well, I was very happy with how everything went. Yeah, we chartered a jet, a private plane, and it brought us from Montenegro back to Dubai. And I landed in Dubai 2 days ago. And I'm here now. I'm coming to you from my office in Dubai. And it's the first time I've been here in 8 months. And it's a little emotional. No, it's not that emotional, but it is emotional. It's I don't know, I'm an experienced traveler. I've seen a lot of the world. But the world that I've seen in the last few months, I don't recognize or understand. And that, in many ways, is terrifying. And travel is hard. Work is hard. Getting out of the house every day is hard. Going to the grocery store is hard. Being on unemployment is hard. Wondering if the government's going to support salaries again is hard. Being at home with your children and your spouse or significant other are hard. Everything just got hard really quickly, right? And here I am complaining about, we were filming and it started to get a little uncomfortable, so we had to go back to where? I don't know. I've been pretty fortunate through all of this, I suppose. Even being stuck in Istanbul was kind of a strange blessing in disguise, I could say. It was difficult and painful and wonderful and all at the same time. It's kind of hard to explain, but being stuck abroad is terrifying. And then once you realize you're a global nomad, you don't really have a home. You just kind of make everywhere your home. And making Istanbul my home for 4 months was pretty nice. And I got a cat out of it. So my little whiskey man who I rescued from death. So he's with me in Dubai. Yeah, we got his pet passport and got all his vaccines and did the entry papers and entry permit, and little whiskey is in Dubai. So maybe that's the story of it all, isn't it? My cat, my kitten that I rescued in Dubai, who has now been to 12 countries. Whiskey has been to Turkey, Slovenia, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, then Poland, then back to Germany. He's been to Malta, Croatia, and Montenegro, and now the United Arab Emirates. So that is a well-traveled 7-month-old cat, and he seems to like it. He sleeps on airplanes. He loves it. He's just, I think, happy to be where we are, where the crew is, and he's become like a crew cat. So for that, I'm also very thankful. But yeah, I'm sitting here in my office, and it's surreal. And my alarm went off this morning at 6, and I had breakfast in my apartment hotel, which is a few blocks away from my office. And I thought to myself, the first thing I'm going to do when I get to the office is do a podcast, because it's been 4 months. You guys deserve better. I'll try to do this more regularly now that I'm not traveling. But you have to understand, filming and podcasting don't go hand in hand, because, I'm up at 6:30 every morning, and then we're crashing out at 8:39, and we're filming all day long, and there's no chance to just sit and collect your thoughts, man. There's no chance. So this is my chance now. This is where I am with you guys. In my office, which is about the size of a confessional booth in a Catholic church. No, it's bigger than that, but maybe not. Who knows? It's an emotional moment this morning to be back in my office with the headphones on, speaking into the mic with you guys out there, hopefully listening, following along. Anyways, I hope everyone out there is healthy. I hope everyone out there is happy, or trying to be. I'm trying to be. It's not a given these days, is it? I mean, it's never been a given, but harder now than maybe ever before. But yeah, that's where we are. That's where I am today. That's where I've been the last 4 months since my last podcast. And it's heavy, isn't it? Whew. It's getting a bit thick in here in the office, reliving all these moments. But wow, yeah, it's been a journey, a serious journey, hasn't it, for us all collectively. Anyways, you guys take care and stay healthy, and I will I'll hopefully do this more often, because I enjoy it. It's part of my therapy. My therapist says I should do more podcasts. No, I'm just joking. It's not a good joke. I'm sorry. I do enjoy it, and I enjoy having all of you out there listen to my deepest, darkest secrets. So I will do this more often. And especially now that I'm in Dubai, where I've got the time, and if I can find a way to podcast socially, in a socially distanced, responsible way, I will. The wires on my microphones are like 3 meters or 4 meters long, so maybe I can just have podcasts with people 3 or 4 meters away, and that'll be the way I can keep podcasting and bringing my life and the people in my life to all of you. So I tried to end this a few minutes ago. It didn't really work out, but let me try to end it now. So you guys stay safe, stay healthy. And I am in Dubai these days. And today was all about where I have been the last 4 months, which is all over Europe somehow. But anyways, you guys take care. Thank you. Okay, wow, that was an emotional take, I guess. Things got a bit heavy in there. I just had to come back to you and wash away the gloom. No, I wasn't really gloomy. It was more just being reflective. But I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. That is where I am today. I'm coming to you from my office here in Dubai. And today was all about where I've been the last 4 months and all the filming we've been doing and the new TV show we came out with and how we're all just trying to stay positive during these challenging times. It's not easy at all. And I hope everyone out there is staying safe and staying healthy. If anyone does want to know what I've been up to for the last few months, obviously the best way to do that is through my Instagram page, which is just at ryanpyle.com. You guys can catch these podcasts and all of my previous podcasts anywhere you catch your podcasts. I guess we're on Spotify and Apple and maybe SoundCloud and maybe Apple Podcasts as well. We're on, anywhere you get podcasts, you can find this podcast. And of course, if you guys want to make this more interactive, and I want to make this more interactive, ask me questions. Write to me on Instagram, which is just at Ryan Pyle, or go to my website, which is ryanpyle.com, and ask me questions. You can email me at studio@ryanpyle.com and ask me questions, and I can talk about them here on the air. And I would enjoy that because you guys have great questions out there, and I would love to make this more interactive. So that's me today. That's my podcast, and coming to you live from Dubai. Anyways, I hope you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and stay mentally positive through it all. Take care. Bye-bye.